It's been a while since I've done an update. It's been 3 months actually since I've done an update for the channel. And when I look back at that video, I realized that most of the things I said I was going to do in that video, I did do. Two of them I didn't. One was a board game, and one was the Best of Dragon magazine, resuming that series. And I do plan on picking that one up. But rather than looking back, I want to look ahead and talk about some things that are going on. My thought that I needed to do an update was occasioned by the fact that I was interviewed recently for the Daiku Games podcast, and I'll put a link to that below here. It's posting probably around the time of this update. And it was a great interview with Gary of the podcast, and we talked a lot about the history of the Geek Gamers channel, as well as getting into some of the content of my solo Game Master's Guide. And we talked about the 10 mindsets of a GM and the resources that I recommend and describe as being fulfilling for solo RPG sessions. But in thinking about that, we went back over as I said, the history of the channel, and I was thinking about the board games that I started out doing on this channel. I had gotten a question from a viewer about why don't I do board games anymore? And I looked back at the past year and realized I have still been doing board games, although certainly the channel has developed into a lot of RPG material. That got me started thinking about board games I still want to show on the channel, and all of that got me thinking about putting together this update. However, before we get to the board games, we're going to talk about the series of videos I just started on soloing 5th edition. The first one was posted already on character creation, and you can see a link to, I'll put links to everything I'm talking about or referencing below. Hopefully there'll also be a link right here that you can get to that video. I'm continuing on with that series, and the next video I'm going to release in that series is talking about working with monsters as a soloist in RPG, and what the challenges are, how to approach the concept of monsters and combat encounters in solo RPG with reference to 5th edition specifically. And I get into how to work with the content that's in both the monster manual as well as the DM guide. So that's going to be the next video in that series. The series will continue on. I have a thought about doing just a more general video on concepts of sort of adventure creation or session creation, maybe, in a way. I have to think about how I'll frame that. And it will be referencing D&D specifically and the content that's available to players with just the 3 main volumes of the book. And then I also thought about doing something about using some supplements. Now, part of the problem or the challenge with D&D is there's just so much material that it's hard to know where to start. And that was the impetus behind my putting forward this series that's only focusing on these 3 books, so that you can see how with the purchase of these 3 books you can just work through and play D&D solo without having to be overwhelmed by all the myriad of other supplements. However, I may include a video in the series focusing on a few supplements. We'll see. If there are any suggestions that you have for that series, or aspects of D&D 5th edition that you want covered in that series, please post suggestions below in this comment section, and I'll take a look at that and think about that. So the D&D 5th edition solo series will continue on, and as I said, the next one up pretty soon is going to be focusing just on monsters. I've done on the channel videos with page throughs of the 1st and 2nd edition of Knock magazine. These are compilations of material from the internet, both new and previously published, that are supplements that can be used as supplements to sessions, sort of an OSR kind of focus. And I have in fresh Knock number 3. So I'm going to be doing another video focusing on the content in here and going through it. I haven't looked at it in detail yet, but that will be also coming up fairly soon on the channel, a look inside the what is in Nock 3 and how it can be used. I have used material in sessions on, I think it was from both of these, I can't really remember. I have absolutely used these in sessions, the content from these, that is to say, some of them. There's a ton of material in each of these, and you can expect to see some material coming in on sessions from Nock number 3, but there will also be an individual video focusing on the content here, and came with a card that's a die drop character backstory generator, and well, we'll look at that as well. So that is going to be coming up probably fairly soon, maybe after the D&D videos. As I said perhaps earlier, but certainly in my other updates, that I'm not necessarily presenting these in the order that they will appear on the channel, but my intention is to do all of these things on the channel. And speaking of board games, I do have plans to do a couple board games on the channel, one of which is called Cryptic Explorers. This is newly out. It was on Kickstarter, and it's described as, not a solo game, I'll say that up front. It's described as a macabre, competitive survival, horror, and tactics tabletop game for 2 to 4 players. It is an asymmetric game where one player is playing the role of what's called the goddess, and the goddess and her minions are being sent out, and they are being challenged by groups of squads that are called cryptonauts, and each player is controlling a squad of 3, and for a full game, you need to have 6 cryptonauts, and against 1 goddess. There are some kind of like a mini game or a smaller way of playing the game with a smaller board where you have 4 against 1. But this is, as I said, it's not solo. My interest in this is twofold, really. I think just from an aesthetic point of view, you can see here just in the rule book, get a sense of some of the design, that it has a kind of a look, and the kind of a look that it has differs from the traditional fantasy look of games that I think is very monolithic in a way, that there are few and far between that stand out, and this is one of them. I tend to be drawn to those that are standouts, like, for example, Dark Venture is one example, Dungeon Degenerates, of course, and something like Sea Evil, for example. Those are all games I treated on the channel, and I was drawn to this first and foremost really by the aesthetics of it. But secondly, there is an effort here to incorporate story and narrative, and there is a whole separate book, I don't have it right here, that gives you essentially roles to play and backstory to read into the various confrontations that happen in the game. There's different boards that have different objectives, and they come with lore that can be read by the player. So to me, it's a very interesting way of attempting to get in an RPG feel, for lack of a better phrase, into a board game. And while it is not a solo game, I'm going to be exploring ways to play it solo, or maybe just play both sides. There is some hidden information, and this is part of it, where you can, as the Cryptonaut player, prepare your character to interrupt the goddess's turn the next time. So that is a little challenging to work out solo because, well, for obvious reasons, that if I know I have a character ready to interrupt, then that would impact perhaps impact my play of the goddess. On the other hand, built into the game is that knowledge, because you are not preparing in secret. You're preparing and indicating the prep to the other player. So this is maybe a little bit too much detail now here, but this will be coming up on the channel, and I'll show you. I've got a game set up. I'm sort of trying to learn the game right now. I've got a little game set up, and I'll just show you what that looks like. So here we are with just showing you that game I'm playing in my ancillary gaming room. And this is a smaller board, and I've got this is the goddess player here with her minions and her cards. So there's a card-based mechanic where she gets a hand of cards that give her tactical and deployment options that she can use, including summoning her minions. And I have the 4 Kryptonauts out here. This is just the player aid, and you can see that every character has different options that they can use, and they have, fairly standard stats. This is essentially their health and stamina, the aim value. So your roll, it's like a roll under where you need to roll under this value to successfully get a hit, and a movement value. And then you have some different options that you can use for various attacks and things and spells that you can cast. The first one on the card being your automatic built-in action, and then the others being options that you pick up along the way as you travel through the world and get these soul tokens here, which is right here, that you can pick up and then use to activate these effects that you have. And it's a little challenging. It's going to be a little challenging to show the whole video because everything is very large. These are large cards, and this map is small. But when the standard game board is open, it's when you add all this stuff in, it has a big footprint. As I said, the look of it is it's monochromatic by intention, and I think it works very well to create an atmosphere, and I look forward to showing you that more in detail once I familiarize myself more with actually how it plays. And speaking of games, this is another one that I've played a bunch and want to do a video on it. It kind of got sidetracked. I had it out and started to record a video, and then, as you can see here, this is Quest for the Lost Pixel, again by request of one of my kids. So I put this away to get this out, and we're at this is the level 7, so we're almost done with this game, almost finding the pixels. So when that goes away, coming back to this game, Australia. This is another asymmetrical game. It can be played solo, again co-op, as well as competitive, and I'll talk about that. I'm interested in this. I've been interested in this for a while, and some people have asked me to cover it on the channel. It's not a new game. It's been out for a few years, but I'm interested in the various aspects of the gameplay that it offers, and also the relative simplicity of the actual gameplay. And the video is going to talk about this because there's a feeling that I'm getting, and part of the reason maybe why I'm not covering more board games at the moment is my sense that there is so much in terms of components and like one-upmanship, for lack of a better phrase, on games to add more and more and more things in games, new games, that don't necessarily contribute to the gameplay beyond having what it seems like just a burdensome memory of this rule and that rule, and that the gameplay itself suffers. And that's like a huge generalization, and I don't have anything in particular in mind, just a feeling that I have about certain games that I have bought and not put on the channel. And this is a different conversation and a digression, but you may have noticed I don't spend time making videos on the channel about games and things I don't like. I don't have the time to spend with it, and if something's on the channel and I'm spending 10 plus hours or whatever learning it, making a video, etc., it's because I like it and I feel there's something in it worth my spending that time on. So there are things that come through the Geek Gamers office that I buy that I don't like, and I don't spend time making videos about them. So there have been a number of board games of late that I have purchased and just not liked, and they don't make their way to the channel. So anyway, that's an aside. But this Australia, I shied away from it for a while because I didn't care for the aesthetics of it, and that may seem superficial, but to me, if I'm staring at something for hours, I want to enjoy what I'm looking at. And I do love the art on the cards in this game, but the rest of it I don't really like, and I'll talk more about that when get to it. But the gameplay is interesting, and I am going to do a video on this coming up in the next few months. And finally, I just want to close out the video by thanking everyone who has purchased a copy of Wanderings. This is my Gothic roll and read table book that's available on Amazon, and it's been gratifying to see the response that it's gotten, and I've enjoyed using it myself in the videos that I have demoed it in, so I really appreciate that. I look forward to bringing you at some point soon the physical copy of my Solo Game Master's Guide. I don't know exactly when I'm going to get my hands on that. It's being printed now as we speak, and I thank you all also for your support in the reception that that book has gotten, at least in terms of comments on the channel when I've made some videos about it. So that is the update for now, and thank you as always for your support on the channel, and I'll see you around.